My name is Michelle Barker and I'm an independent costume historian, and basically I'm working on a sort of a mass project where I'm studying 18th century costume, and the idea is to look at original garments, record the patterns, so the actual cut of the garment, record the sewing methods that the original makers have used, and really build up almost from sort of like the making side of things, how the fashion is developing throughout the 18th century. So that's kind of what I do as a broad general thing. And then this costume collection, the Rev John Parkinson's collection, kind of came in through that, because I was looking at a 1790s coat, and I wanted other coats to compare it to look at construction techniques, patterns, such like that, and then just discover this amazing costume collection. And there is something about having a collection that's for one man, because you see these coats made for one body figure, and therefore it's so much better to be able to compare differences, to compare pattern cutting shapes, because if you just take one coat from a museum, you don't know how tall that the original wearer was, you don't know how short they were, you don't know if they were longer in the body or they had a short nape to waist and long legs, you don't know their body shape. So you can look at the pattern that you've drafted from the original garment, it's got a nice long nape to waist, but you don't know if that's fashion. Whereas when you've got one man with 8 coats that possibly could be spread over, you know, a decade or so of making, you really get to see changes in what the person who is cutting the cloth and cutting the coat for the fashion, what changes they're allocating to the coat. So it's been an amazing collection to study. About 2 sessions in, I suddenly realised, oh my goodness, there's more to this collection. So not only are there coats, there are waistcoats. Waistcoats are designed to fit the body a lot more snugly. Coats, they get pattern cutted with a certain amount of ease. That just means they're designed to be so much bigger than the body's exact measurements, whereas the waistcoats are designed to be that bit more snugger, so you get a much more accurate reading of the man's figure. They're also designed to be buttoned up completely, so you don't have any of the confusion of how much fashionable cutaway there was. So waistcoats are a really useful way of actually seeing the man's original measurements. So yeah, to discover that there was a load of waistcoats as well was a real gem. The timeline actually came from when I started taking the pattern from the original garments and really beginning to see the waistline rise. So it starts off lower in the earlier part of the 18th century, and then begins to get higher, as it does with women's fashion. Women's fashion do exactly the same thing in this era. The waistline is rising. So that was really nice to see the pocket placement and the waist placement rise in the coats. And also the layout for the skirts, that was really spread out, angled in the earlier coats, whereas by the time you sort of get into the 1790s, late 1780s, it's become much more straight. I think we can definitely safely say he likes bold design. Like the coat behind me, the buttons are massive. I've studied other coats where these are called cut metal buttons or steel buttons, and they do get massive in the 1790s, late 1780s. They do get much bigger, and there's lots of caricatures where, you know, they've got these massive buttons on their coat and the women are like, ugh, the gleam. So it is fashionable, but it's excessive fashion. And also we haven't quite totally got his sizing yet, but I think he's maybe sort of 5'9", 5'10", so he's not a short man. And he definitely puts weight on. So his coats are smaller in the beginning and then they grow in size. So yeah, which is kind of nice as well. Like his chest gets bigger. So for my research, it's essential for me to see the original garments in the museums. It's so easy just to look at fashion plates or paintings and think, oh yes, you know, the collar's become fashionable at this point, or oh look, the waistlines are rising. It's a completely different kettle of fish when you study the original garments. Any costume historian out there will know exactly what I mean, that you have a garment on the table and you're like, this doesn't match anything that we see in portraiture. And there's still so much we don't know about 18th century costume. You know, there's so much evidence for this era, but still we don't fully understand exactly what people are wearing and how they're wearing it. So to study the garments in the museum, you're seeing what was really being worn.